What is a Deputy Attorney General like Lisa Monaco's sort of situational awareness about the ongoing efforts to obtain reporters' emails and about this, what is described as extremely aggressive tactic for a non-corruption kind of investigation of subpoenaing the records of sitting members of Congress, their staff, and their children?
So there's no question that to subpoena this kind of information, you would need extensive factual predication, and you would brief this to the highest levels in the FBI and the Justice Department. My educated guess about what's going on here is the reason we're seeing this, and I suspect are going to see a lot more of this, is because these gag orders are running out, and that the current Justice Department is not willing to stand behind them when they're not warranted. To me, that's a sign, as we saw last week with respect to going after reporters, as Mike just mentioned, where gag orders were not defended. I think in the reporting last night, that was great by the New York Times. I think what you're seeing is these gag orders being lifted as information now is going up to the DAG and the Attorney General. I suspect that what's going on is they're shocked about what's going on. I don't think the response, though, of going to the Inspector General is sufficient. That's going to take years. The Inspector General was notably absent during the Trump administration. And I think there has to be a systemic answer to this. I think there can be hearings, and I think that Congress does have the power to require more out of the executive so that, I have no doubt that Merrick Garland is going to run a clean Justice Department, but that's not the issue. The issue is, what do we do when there's no longer a Merrick Garland and we have somebody more like Attorney General Barr? And Congress can require the Justice Department to make showings that are much, much higher than what they needed to show here factually, and getting the court more involved so that you have a greater check on the so-called unitary executive, which I think is the heart of the problem here.
So let me show you. Adam Schiff's response overlaps with a lot of the things you're saying. Let me show it to you, Andrew Weissmann. We'll talk about it on the other side.
The truth is, I don't know how broad these subpoenas were, except that I know they were extraordinarily broad. Went out to staff who weren't even related to the committee, who had no responsibilities on the committee. And in terms of how many members were affected, part of the difficulty in knowing for sure is a lot of people who got this notice from Apple thought it was spam. And we may learn more after the story. Now the story has come out about others who similarly got these notices as they go back and they check their old email to see whether they got a notice like this as well.
What kind of thing would predicate an extremely broad and sweeping subpoena of records of an unknown number of members of Congress, their staffs, and their children?
It would be, you would need to have substantial evidence. And I can tell you that at the FBI, there is something called a SIM, which is a sensitive investigation group that goes to the general counsel, the deputy director, and very senior members who would review something like this before it was approved. In other words, for something this sensitive, you don't want it to be left to more junior people who may or may not have the right judgment. And then it gets briefed to the DAG and to the Attorney General for something that is this sensitive. So to me, this is something where there's just an unusual failure because it reeks of just being a fishing expedition with the Department of Justice just being an amanuensis of the White House, which is exactly how you get to autocracy.
And Neil Katyal, which is exactly what, as Mike Schmidt says, this is actually what Donald Trump was saying out loud he wanted to do. There was reporting as early as 2017 or 18 that he wanted the Justice Department to prosecute Hillary Clinton, to prosecute Jim Comey. He accused Andy McCabe of treason. I believe he called Jim Comey a traitor. And now we know that his Trumpiest of all of his, whatever he had, 3 or 4 attorneys general, revived. That's the word that the New York uses to describe what they did to an investigation that had hit what they describe as a dead end. What do you make of Bill Barr's denial that he was ever briefed on it?
Well, I'll believe Bill Barr's denial and his recollection of the leak cases just about as I'll believe his summary of the Mueller report. I think this is bombshell reporting. It's really significant, and not to sound too extreme, but this is really how tyrannical regimes operate. And the news today that we're learning about, it's kind of like Putin getting together with Nixon sitting in a tree, and you come up with Trump and Sessions and Barr. This is electronic spying on political opponents in Congress and their families. And I think Mike's absolutely right to say that the whole thing proves what we've always suspected, which is that Trump's public tweets, his bluster, his zeal, all of it created a real sense in the administration that Donald Trump demanded abuses of power. And this is not an inquiry into like what Representative Schiff ate for breakfast or something like this. This is about getting the numbers through a law enforcement investigation of everyone Schiff called and everyone who called him and the other dozen people, including family members and the like. And the rationale for this investigation, once again, was about Russia, about who was disclosing secret meetings between Trump administration officials and Russian officials. And that's, of course, why Jim Comey was fired too. All roads with the Trump administration somehow lead back to Russia and attempts to cover up, attempts to squelch any sort of oversight, which is, of course, Congress's job under the Constitution.
So with all that stated, let me show you how Bill Barr answered a question about investigating, about taking requests for investigations from the president.
Attorney General Barr, has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that question?
I will repeat it.
Yeah.
Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The president or anybody else?
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation, but
Perhaps they've suggested,
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
hinted,
I don't know.
inferred. You don't know. Okay.
So, Neil Katyal, this just sounds so different now. I mean, I think at the time we were all hung up on him struggling with what the definition of suggest means. It is in the public record that Donald Trump was publicly calling for investigations into rivals. So it had been suggested to Mr. Barr. What sorts of questions do congressional officials sort of now have real reason to have answered under oath from Mr. Barr?
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I were covering that hearing live when Barr testified, and I think we sensed then a lot of obfuscation on Bill Barr's part. Now, of course, there's even more. And I think it's not just Barr. We're also going to have to go back to Jeff Sessions as well and see what he's up to. And, poor Jeff Sessions can't catch a break in one sense. He gets fired as Attorney General. He loses his Senate primary. He's now facing a potential subpoena from Congress, and Bill Barr is blaming him for this electronic spying stuff. And it's enough to make you feel bad for him until you recognize that he completely deserves it. I mean, these people, spit on the traditions of the Justice Department. They obfuscated. And, what you just saw with then Senator Harris was Congress at its best, trying to do what the Madison and Hamilton asked of Congress, which is to oversee the executive branch. And the story now is so significant because those very people who were performing that oversight job were being electronically spied on by these same folks. That's the antithesis of what the Constitution is all about.